Welcome to LinkAGES Connects. I'm Ashley Artie Beck, a social impact consultant with LinkAGES. I'm here today in the studio to interview three incredible human beings who are all part of a program that will just blow your mind. So let's just hop right in. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourselves? Let's start with you, Maurice.
I'm Maurice Ka, Denver-based artist, organizer, and collaborative partner over at Rose House Botanicals.
I am Confidence Omenai. I am a multimedia artist. I write across genres, and I am the co-creator and program coordinator of Collective Healing Through Art in partnership with LinkAGES.
And I'm Rachel Cohen, the owner of Aging Dynamics Consulting Firm and the executive director of LinkAGES.
Okay, so let's just dive right in and hear more about Collective Healing Through Art, a new-ish program in the community. Tell us all about it.
Collective Healing Through Art is the brainchild and baby of myself and Haley Sanner, the other co-creator and program coordinator. We came together because we had seen during the pandemic that there was a lot of isolation and milestones missing, and in our personal lives and in the communities we worked in, the suicide rates were going up with youth, things that the alarming amount of older adults that they were losing in their families. It was, for lack of a better word, my friend Susie Q has a poem about how all our families have missing teeth. And I felt like a lot of families in LGBTQIA and marginalized communities had less resources, had less access, and were less resilient during the beginning of the pandemic. And so it is always my aim to be the solution. We were all aware of the problem. We could all see what was happening. And I knew that there was a way that we could disrupt or interrupt what was happening. And the interesting thing that brings us full circle is that Haley and I did not know each other 2 years ago. We went to social justice, social racism. What is it? What was the name of the class? I'm sorry, you're gonna have to give it. They can edit it. Workshop. Yes, Haley and I met in a breakout room that Maurice facilitated at CSC. And we were in this breakout room, and there were times where someone would say something that I found offensive or hurtful, and Haley would inbox me, I see you, and I know that wasn't okay, and I'm gonna say something. And so there were these moments throughout that, I think it lasted for a couple of days or weeks, so I feel like we came back.
2 weeks.
Yeah, and when we came back the second time, there was a moment where Haley spoke up and I didn't have to do it. And that has been the trend in our friendship. That day she said, I think that we could build something together. And I really want to talk about it if you would meet me when we get out of here. And so I was like, let's do it. So whenever someone asks to meet me, this just ties into what we're talking about, I'm going to pick a business owned by someone of color that I know in this community. So she wanted to meet, I said, meet me at Gypsy House, because their response to being asked to meet in a place that is comfortable for me and that my community is in always tells me whether or not I want to be in partnership with you. If you come back with, I'd rather go this place, whitewashed and safe, I'm not coming. And Haley was like, sure, I'd love to be there. And we show up and we talk about our histories with the ways that we were brought up in intergenerational communities and the resources and the resilience it built for us and how much we had to overcome, and our belief that we could take the intergenerational knowledge that we had been given and the art forms that we loved and that we could put them together. We had absolutely no idea what it was going to be. But we spent days and weeks and hours crafting a curriculum, and we came to the conclusion that what we wanted to do was bring 10 older adults and 10 younger adults together for 8 weeks. For 2.5 hours each week, they would learn a new art form. And while learning that art form, they would use the curriculum we created to build a bond and unpack what we were all experiencing collectively. And we had to start our first cohort virtually. And but we believed that it was possible and that it could be done. I'd never written a grant before. It was a very daunting process, absolutely horrified, but I believed I was in a season of my life, and I called it my hello season. And I was like, I'm gonna say hello and yes to everything that fits my purpose, and this feels right. So Haley was like, whatever you don't know, I can teach you. And Haley spent days and weeks teaching me things that I had no idea about and making sure I had every resource. And there were things Haley didn't know. And I was like, I'll teach you all of this stuff. And we made a perfect team. And so we were really honored that we received a grant from Next 50 that funded collective healing through art and gave birth to our vision. And we have led 3 cohorts in 2022. When we started out, it was Haley and I. We are housed, and our first house was Lutheran Family Services of Rocky Mountain. And we didn't have a location to have class in. So Haley and I were like, well, what will we be doing? And I thought the thing that had been sanctuary, that created the poet that opened all the doors, was the public library. And I remembered the library has community rooms. Let me give them a call. And then I met with them, and Jim and Lily and Amy Delpo at the Denver Public Library was the first large organization to say, we see what you're trying to do, we believe in your vision, and we're on board. And so Amy partnered with us. We decided to do the first cohort online. We did the second cohort inside the Ford Warren Library. And then by the time we got to the end of the second cohort, we had a waiting list for the third cohort. And we, at that point, had a sit down with Regis, and Regis University offered us a space on campus. And so we just wrapped up our third cohort of collective healing through art inside, on the campus of Regis University. But we wrapped up our third cohort on the campus of Regis University, and this Saturday we had our final celebration at the Zion Senior Center. The Zion Senior Center was the first place that we had a celebration. When we ended the virtual cohort, we wanted them to have a place to come together and meet. We had no space. And the Zion Senior Center opened their doors for us, and Kanjo Ethiopian catered. And we had an amazing celebration, and it was beautiful. And I wanted us to end the year the way we started the year. To come back, we started out as 22, me, Haley, and 20 people. And we ended the year on Saturday, November the 19th, with 117 participants, 12 facilitators, all BIPOC and of color. And to have every business, Takabe catered, Sweet Sweets, Black-owned, woman-owned business in 5 Points or in the Park Hill area, catered all our desserts. But Haley and I just stood back after and watched. It was beautiful. We actually took something that started in a breakout room at CSC and turned it into a vision in our journal and a huge vision board. And it is a living, breathing entity. And the real, I love these moments that we keep having that let me know we are on the right path. But on day one, after we knew we were funded and it was official and we were going to work, I took a pink Post-it note and I wrote Rachel Cohen LinkAGES on it, because they were the only other organization I could see that really was doing the work that I wanted to participate in. And I wanted to be able to partner with them. And when I always set really big dreams. And so I would look at that every day. I was like, I'm gonna get there. We're gonna make collective healing through art into something that we can actually present. And one day it's gonna be worthy. And then they'll wanna collaborate with us. And I thought that was 5 years out. And here we are, 10 months later. And it's a thing. We are in partnership with LinkAGES, and I have had the honor to work side by side with Rachel on 3 grants in the last 30 days, and Ashley, and it is such a gift. And Maurice was one of my friends before we came into creating the program, but I really love Rose House Botanicals. it is a space that more people needed to know existed. I have gone there. Sometimes you just need a space that feels safe and where the energy is right and the conversation will be good and you could talk about community or relationships, whether it be high level, low level, or margaritas and tacos next week, anybody please. You're going to find what you need when you walk through the door. And I wanted these businesses to last. I have watched gentrification black the eye of every business I love. Starting with, I got here in 2013, we have lost Crossroads Theater. The deepest wound was when they took the original Gypsy House. Gypsy House is back and thriving on Broadway, and we continue to support. And then this year, Welton Street Cafe, which was the heart of 5 Points. They are currently working on the build for their new location, which will be at 29th and Welton. But at present, they don't have a temporary space, and they are catering so that they can keep the business going. And I felt like all of these businesses had valid services, products, but more than anything, they were the heart of our community. I knew on any day I could pull up at Welton Street Cafe and find family. I could pull up at Crossroads Theater and there would be a poet somewhere on Friday night. We were going to spit poems. And Gypsy Coffee House, the original location at 13th and Marion, is the first place that I found my community when I got here with 4 children and homeless. So for me, it is really important that these businesses survive, that they thrive, and that they are the pulse points for the community that we're building.
Thank you for sharing that. That was a lot to bear witness to and to share with our audience. Gosh, where to start? I guess I would like to start at the beginning. Maurice, did you have any idea what was happening in your Zoom workshop?
I had no idea, so I'm learning a lot about what was happening. Because as a facilitator, right, like I am there and, you know, learning to facilitate during the pandemic where everything is online, you know, because our style at Creative Strategies for Change is very much an embodied kind of style of engaging folks. So we actively engage people and we incorporate a lot of art stuff in there. And so how do we translate that to the internet was like a big challenge. For us. And so we're just trying to figure out how to make it fun, how to make it like lively and not just another Zoom meeting. And so when I'm there, I'm looking at the time and, you know what I mean, looking at like faces in the small boxes to see are people with us, you know, that kind of thing, checking the chat. And so I had no idea. I did notice, I think, in the last weekend in one of the breakout sessions, if I felt like you two had a vibe. And so I was like, oh, I wonder if they already, I assume you two work together. I was like, oh, I wonder if they work together, if they do things together already, or they must be from the same organization, or they must be friends or colleagues or some sort, is what I thought walking away. And then it was really cool for me in my other hat and role in community, like, you know, as, you know, like running a business in South Broadway and the really interesting journey it is to do that during a pandemic, right? Because there's no business model for a pandemic, it doesn't exist. It's called your intuition and hope it works out, right? It's where we've been for 2 years. And then that coming out of that ish in certain ways in the 3rd year, ending that space and entering a recession, right? The business model is let's pray it works, right? Because you have nothing, there's no other data to rely on.
It's
right? Yeah, it's like let's see if it works, and you know, and let's just hope that I have a couch to lay on if it doesn't work out. Right? Is where you are as a business and where most businesses are. And so when we talk about small businesses are 250 people to 500 people or something like that. Most of the businesses that we're talking about are businesses that are called micro businesses when you have under 50 people. And I've got 4, so I'm a micro business, right? But it was really cool, I think, to get the invitation from you and Haley, right? For us to kind of be a part of the series, and be a location and then host, and then for me as an artist to teach. And now knowing that you all met during that training is like a really beautiful moment. I think for me to bear witness to, and also really cool to be a part of that story, right? In so many different ways. So it was really beautiful to see and witness. And I'm learning more about it because I totally thought you all knew each other
We'd never met
before the
that
workshop.
We're seeing into the future. Okay, so to contextualize, how did you meet Confidence and Haley, who couldn't be with us here today? And what were your first thoughts upon meeting Confidence? Because, I mean, wow.
Think, wow, does it? So I first met Haley, actually, before they had conceived this program.
Okay.
And Haley had approached me about linkages just in general and for the organization that she was working at. And it, at the time, wasn't a good fit to join the collaborative, but I was extremely impressed with Haley and actually had made a note and said to several people, if I ever get the opportunity to work with her, I will take it in a heartbeat. She just has a very clear mind. She is when she talks about data, when she talks about program and community, it was very impressive. It really connected. And so when I got an email from Haley in Confidence, I don't know, it was a handful of months ago, I absolutely jumped at the chance to have another conversation. And yeah, when I met Confidence then, I was like, what a team. And literally every conversation that the three of us have had, I leave with goosebumps because there's so much synchronicity between what we have developed through LinkAGES, being that it's a collaborative model that is focused on addressing social isolation, all these very similar words, right? Addressing it through intergenerational connections, but meaningful intergenerational connections, and doing it in a way that has impact not only on the individuals that are in the programs, but also the community. And so when they came to me and described collective healing through art, again, it was the goosebumps and the heart racing because there was no question that what they were doing is also what we are doing in LinkAGES. And so when this opportunity arose to bring the two together, there was no hesitation. It was just, okay, so how do we do this?
How do we do it?
And as Confidence said, we haven't paused once. We immediately, started looking for funding. We have to keep this going. And I firmly believe that, as we have talked about our visions for growth and for, scaling our, sort of collective vision, we have this team with the four of us now, with yourself and with Haley and with Confidence, to really make that happen and really bring this kind of incredibly impactful programming to communities all over the country. But doing it with this same spirit of with community, not program in a box. It's really about with.
So I feel like we've woven in how, or that small businesses are part of collective healing through art. How?
So the first thing that I was looking at, and we've talked about this because, as we said, we have a very large vision. And so we had to start somewhere. Now, it's interesting because once again at CSC last week, during an abolitionist teacher training, I was able to really sit with, how do I want us to move forward? And what I had been doing was being very, very intentional about I know these people personally. It's not just a business I walk by. These are places where when my daughter gets off the school bus, she will go there and they will make sure that she is safe and taken care of until I finish working. These are places where these women have been in the delivery room with me and these children, and so I trust their spirits. What I wanted, no one is perfect. Every community will have challenges, but I chose the businesses that I wanted to interact with by what kind of collaborative spirit do they embody, and do their ideals align with ours. And so for me, collaboration is something in this city at large, as a community, that many nonprofits struggle with. I understand that, funding is a thing, but I don't have a scarcity mentality. There's a funder for each of us, and we would work a lot better if we collaborated. And so I looked for the people who did the work when they weren't getting paid, who do the work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether anybody notices or not. There is a whole network of healers and artists and businesses in this community that are the reason why most of us survived this pandemic. And no one knew their names, and no one knew where their businesses were. Meadowsweet in Morrison was where I got all of the supplies I needed to survive when me and my whole household came down with COVID. It was where I got everything I needed to deal with our symptoms while we waited it out. It was Alchemy, where when they ran out of what I needed there, Alchemy knew what to get next. It was all of these women making sure that everyone in the community ate, everyone had medicine. Some of these women were Latin, some were queer, some were Black, but all of us had the same idea that we are community and we take care of our own. And and we don't compete with each other. I want us all to have what we need. And I am not in competition with anyone. And so the businesses that I reached out to were micro businesses who had a spirit of collaboration. They wanted to build, they wanted to grow, and there was this added component. I had watched these people give themselves into the negative in many cases, and they were able to be restored often. But what I realized is the same collaborative healers that we brought in also needs restorative space to heal. So the next level of collective healing through art was the professional development and the retreats and the resources for these communities. Because as Maurice was talking about the nuance of being a micro business, it is equally stressful. It is also isolating. There are things that they carry on their shoulders that they have nowhere to sit it down. And so not only did I appreciate their valuable healers, valuable business people. I appreciated them being willing to open up their spaces, open up their businesses, provide supplies. All of that was great and grand. And the whole time I was looking at all of my friends like, you're next. I have already planned a retreat for 2023 for all of the facilitators and business partners that were a part of our 2022 program, because we collectively heal. It was never just about the participants. It was about building a community that trusts each other enough to lean into vulnerability, to be able to ask for the help you need, and for us to have a commonwealth of resources that could restore us all.
I want to say this. I think as a business being approached by CHTA, it was really, I think, nice for, us to take a break out of, there's like about 20 million hours that go into things before the doors open every day, right? And so it was like really nice for, I think, us to, just seeing where like intergenerational dialogue or intergenerational space, right? And thinking about me as a person who's oftentimes running the business, and then I operate in terms of an artist and organizer, right? Like, how much access do I have to intergenerational spaces? Because I generally don't, right? Because just like in my home, I live alone, right? So there's one generation, right? You know what I mean? Yes. And then in my peer group, and that kind of space. So like, I think as an individual level, like, what is my access to these spaces? And also I think wanting to be a place where I think that can happen, because you can run a business just to like sell things, right? And you can probably make $1 million selling glitter. You know what I mean? Glitter in envelopes, right? I'm sure a lot of people do, actually, because they're very available everywhere, right? But I think in a space like Rose House, for us, is like trying to have a space that's available for a lot of conversations, whether you're there for like plants or herbs or things that smell good or things that look good. Also wanting to have a space that had a lot of entry points, and understanding that like as a business, my business partner and I want to have a space where there's a lot of like entry points and a lot of different experiences that can happen, right? Like, okay, you don't like plants, we still want you to be a part. Come over here and get some tea. Come over here and have this experience, right? Okay, you don't like tea, you don't like natural living, or that's not your thing, or that's not your vibe, right? Okay, so maybe you're here for a class. And wanting to have a space where there's just a lot of ways in which we can experience and witness ourselves and also each other, right? Because it can get boring just trying to sell, whatever you're trying to sell, and how much does that feed your soul? And so, like, I think during the timeline, looking at the timeline of the pandemic and coming out of that and figuring all that out and everything that we've been through politically and emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, during these past couple of years just in particular, it was a space where I hadn't taught a class, as an artist based on, since the pandemic started, around like my practice, around like my beliefs, the way in which I do herbalism. And so you were the first person that actually allowed me to like have and teach a class since the pandemic started. So it was a way from like, oh, I actually do really love teaching about herbalism, right? Because it was just an opportunity for me to not think about the store. And also be in the store and have people introduce people and build relationships and experiences. But it was like a certain part of me got reignited or turned back on. And I was like, oh yeah, I like teaching a lot. I just forgot about it because I've been busy trying to keep the lights on.
Yeah. And I understood that. I specifically had, Maurice is amazing. He had a whole line of products under the Blue Saint. And
You're just gonna tell
I'm going to tell all the business. So the Blue...
Yeah, do we know, have we explained exactly what your business is yet?
Oh, so Rose House Botanicals, it's, we say Living Botanica and purveyor of apothecary goods. Living Botanica in that we're probably most known for selling houseplants, right? And that's about kind of half of who we are. But we also sell, all the ways in which plants are a part of our life. So it's part plants, part apothecary. So that means there's lots of herbs and herbal products there. So you can come in. We have herbalists there 3 days a week. You can get custom formulation if you're, sleepy, tired, whatever it is. If you want something yummy to drink, if you want a great smelling body oil, a great candle, if you want some botanically themed art, because plants are in every single level of our lives, no matter who we are. And plants in the natural world are kind of what allow us as human beings to be able to survive anything. Everything, we're wearing plants, sitting on plants, we ate plants before we got here, so plants keep us healthy. And so we experience that. So it's like houseplants and also herbs and the botanical goods where they are. So that's me as a collaborative partner at Rose House Botanicals. We're on South Broadway, which is a really fun, really creative kind of neighborhood to be a part of. Outside of that, I wear a lot of hats. Outside of that, I'm a spiritualist and herbalist. I provide services like through that lens that has taken the form of the Blue Saint, which was a company that I still have and made a lot of body products and had to put on pause during the pandemic just because of the pandemic and the Trump presidency and running a small business on top of all those things. So I do make a lot of body products and herbalism and do a lot of spiritual services through the brand called the Blue Saint. So.
And
that's what brought us to creating Rinse and Relief. Rinse and Relief was the very first workshop that we did. We did 4 things inside of Rose House. We did zine making. We also had...
Zine making allowed the store to reconnect with an artist who we had not connected with in a long time. Because they used to sell products in our store.
Tasha Dunstan.
Yeah, right. And then some, things changed. And then the pandemic happened. And so we hadn't just lost kind of contact. And so that to have you approach us to have that workshop was great to see her, to see them in the store and do the workshop. And it was really cool from the store standpoint just to walk by and see this place where everywhere the back room is messy and there's magazines everywhere and it's like loud and there's like, people in their 60s, people in their teens, all in the same room doing art together. It was just a really cool experience, I think, for us to have. And things like that are kind of what give us energy.
It nourishes me every time I do. I have not participated in a workshop that didn't let me leave stronger than I was when I got there. Mm-hmm. And I think that it is important, even when he wasn't facilitating, you were still able to receive something just because it was inside your space. And so it is a constant give and take, everyone in the cycle, from the business owner who has allowed us into their space. People are coming and going. That is more reason. They're buying things as they're in the shop. Now they're telling more people about the location. And we kept coming back. And they loved Rinse and Relief, which was the one that you directly facilitated so much that we had to come up with a part 2. And rinse and relief was, would you like to talk
rinse and
about?
relief was really looking at like herbs to make spiritual baths for emotional and spiritual health, right? And really drawing from, I think, my traditions of herbalism that, are rooted in the kind of Black cultural experiences of the American South and also the Caribbean, and looking at like kind of like what are the common denominator herbs that anybody can do to provide like an herbal bath, and looking at in those cultural traditions of the Black American South and the Caribbean, herbal baths, take a place of a form of like healing for anybody for emotional and spiritual health, right? Not just the kind of like good luck baths, but also when you're tired, when you feel like your energy, has been sucked out of you, when you need to revive, when you need to go and make a good appearance somewhere, when you need to kind of like bond with your loved ones being whatever love looks like in your life. And really looking at like there are things that we can make from very simple ingredients, right, that are culturally rooted, have a lot of history, and that anyone can do. And so wanting to have a space where people can have a tool to do something for themselves. Yes, at Rose Botanicals, we make amazing products. We just released a set of, of bath soaks and bath salts, right? Siren's Blend, Clear the Way, all these pieces. Yes, we have those, we do those. As the Blue Saint, right? I've got an amazing spiritual bath called Healers and Hustlers Bath. It is amazing. The reputation speaks for itself, right?
Raise an eyebrow because it's sold out right now.
It is sold out right now.
And someone needs their badge.
Yeah, and you and lots of people. Yeah, you and lots of people, right? And so we will, just keep an eye out. We will. It'll be here. But also too, right? Like there are things that you can do on your own, right? So you have options, right? And so the piece around like looking at small businesses. Usually, when you go into a city, what defines culture are the businesses, right? Like in large amount, like who is producing, who is giving texture to the city to say what the city is, who lives here, right? We talk about community, kind of like what are the values that are being upheld and sustained, right? Like what culture is being maintained in the city, and the businesses are a large part of that. And I think we live in a world where I don't know that it is equitable or fair to us as a society to only allow multinationals define what culture is, right? As great and as convenient as it can be, it's lovely, it has its lovely parts of it, right? But I think the reasons why small businesses, micro businesses are valuable is that they allow the city to express itself and determine like what its reality is and what its future is and can be. And so it's not just about like buy my stuff, it's really about like how can we have this conversation about how we take care of ourselves. Here's how we do it. You can do, like it on your own, right? It's really nice when people come into the store and they say, hey, I have something, I kind of want to sell it, would you take a look at it, right? And so whether we can or cannot is a lot of pieces, but it's really nice when people come in and have something that's, this is better than what we make. This is great. Like we want to have this here. We want you in the store, or we want to be one of the few businesses, right, that can house you and say, get it here at our space. And so I think teaching the class allows us to kind of like feed community so that we can be fed later. And kind of that is that cultural exchange, right? It's not just about exchanging of dollars. So that is very, very important because we need your presence. We also need your dollars so that we can be here in the morning, right? This agreement, right? Like you, with the money that you have to purchase things, right? Like we can sell them to you. We'll be here. That's kind of what makes the relationship last, but also too, it's about cultural exchange. And so the bath class really was about like wanting to understand that we have this shared experience, right? How it lands individually, there's going to be different, so we can be respectful of that. But there's this shared experience of fatigue, of isolation, of needing and wanting to care, and of really breaking down access. Yes. Right? Like you can make a spiritual bath with some herbs in your home that you probably already have most of them already, right? And so let's just have this conversation and talk about it. Let me show you what I know, right? And then maybe, and I think what's cool is that maybe in like 2 years you show me what you know, and I get to be the student this time.
I make my own spiritual baths, but I still want you to teach me how to do it. I've been growing lavender and calendula, and I'm really proud of them, but I feel like I really want whatever you're making.
Yeah, no, there's also too, there's things about like kind of like when we're eating food, like when somebody offered me an orange earlier, right? Like kind of like in cooking and baking, right? The skin is like really the most fragrant, part of it, right? And so those can be used in spiritual baths as well, right? So you don't have to throw those away. Like you ate an orange, you can also have that orange help your emotional and spiritual health as well as your physical health, right? So there's, lots of things that, we can talk about there. And so.
Okay, I'll come in.
We just really wanted, for me,
I see it as
Are you open right after this?
we're open right now till 6 p.m. No, but I see it really, I saw it like as an investment, right? Like how can I kind of like be with people in community and invest in the community and give something back, right?
That was the
So I
point.
told you, okay, I've got all these herbs I just want to do something with.
Yeah.
Right? Like I just want to kind of.
And I want to decolonize. I feel like our practices are often stolen, commodified, and then they try to sell it back to us at prices that are not accessible. And so when I came to Maurice with his class, part of it was I'm also always being subversive in some way. And I was like, you don't have to be able to buy it from the world market. You don't need $30 to $45 to get the best result. You just need to know what to use and how. And so I'm always trying to disseminate more information and make it more accessible and demystify. And just the more people that know what is available and how to use it, the less the big machine capitalism is able to rob us.
Well, and I think too, like the word that we all keep using is community. And so one of the beautiful things about what you are doing, what you have built, is that you're really bringing in all of the different aspects of community. And all too often, I mean, I'm also a micro business owner as well, we are overlooked. And we are only looking to the nonprofit sector to strengthen or to tell us about the community or to make change. And we literally all have to work together. And so this example to me, I mean, it's front and center. It's showing why we all have value, but also how we are all contributing to the strength of our community. And by bringing in others that didn't know about us before and didn't know, oh, I could share with you and then you can share with me, and we all have that value, which is also the beautiful part of the intergenerational connections. We all have something that we're bringing to the table.
We just had Chandra from the Next 50 initiative in here, and she was talking about how they are really, as a funding organization, trying to fund innovative programs because so little funding goes to, in the Next 50's case, the aging space. And this is such an example of an innovative program where it starts on this micro level where we're connecting older adults and youth to form connections, and then it just explodes where it's like self-care and inner resilience and coping skills, and then supporting the businesses and supporting the artists and supporting the healers, and then that just loops back around to the beginning, right? Because older adults are not isolated and youth are not lonely due to isolation if their whole community is showing up for them. Or there are multiple communities, as you were saying earlier, like we are part of many communities. Why? So LinkAGES is a grantor too, and so many of our programs have art with no S, and storytelling at the center. Why? What is it about art and storytelling that is so healing and connecting for people?
I mean, any of us could take it. We could all collaboratively answer. For me, and Haley would agree, we talk about it all of the time, the storytelling piece was the bridge that builds the bond. Because when we were all virtual for our very first session, it wasn't until I told a story that pulled, because first they were like, oh, a pretty lady on the screen, she's cute. And then it was,
She was the best eye makeup.
thank you. But then when I told a very short snippet of why it was valuable to me, I firmly believe when we say the names of those we love and that gave us the strength and the wisdom to be where we are. And Vicki Renee Arnett was my aunt, but my mother. She mothered me for my entire life and my children. And I laid her to rest 3 days before we started our first cohort. And we had done a lot of work to get the grant, to get started. And I had been through a lot, but I had a made up mind that I was the daughter of Vicki Renee Arnett, and she would want me to build a community so that these people wouldn't be isolated. And in showing up for them, I was showing up for her. And so I gave a brief 3-minute story about how she crocheted every single thing I had, and that I had 80 pairs of socks with the most elaborate patterns on them. And right before she passed on March the 11th, she had spent the few months before that nonstop crocheting for me. And I didn't understand why she kept texting and calling. Is the color right? Is the pattern right? And I'm thinking, you are a master at this. Everything you do is right. But she kept, and she was really adamant, and she shipped all 20 of them to me from Tulsa. And of course, they were all beautiful. And I didn't understand why it was so important that she finished them till I realized that it would be the last thing she was able to do for me in this life. And I told them that story. And then all the walls come tumbling down. And then everybody wants to share their story. And then young and old, now we're all invested because now we have shared our history and our pain, and we are willing to figure out, how did you show up? Because I had shown up fully, and they were like, I don't understand how you're still doing it. And I was like, give me 6 weeks. And we walk, and that's where we start. It is about, storytelling is the gateway. You got to build a bond on something, and it requires you to be vulnerable and honest and authentic. And I think that it is how we have, whether it is a digital story, whether we are collaging, it is the launching pad for a lasting connection.
That was a really good answer. How about the arts, Maurice? How do you see the arts being significant, if at all, to the way that we connect with one another?
Well, I think that just like storytelling, the arts, they provide a platform for intimacy, right? And so when we think about like isolation, what the burden of isolation is the lack of intimacy, right? Or the desire to commune and, needing and wanting a way or permission, or a gateway drug in order to be, that. And I look at, well, the first thing we do when we walk in a room full of people, at least in my head, I'm thinking, who are these people, right? And then I'll later want to know what they are, like what their roles in like life of society are, but kind of who are they? So I feel like art is what allows us to do that. And I think it's a great ship in that we can, we don't, it's safe, right? We can be there as a creator or as a receiver, and then allow it to kind of like transform and take us. Really, what I just, as one of the coaches at Creative Strategies for Change at CSC, we just did a 6-month cohort with folks doing this piece around like leadership development for folks engaged in social justice work at the intersection of mental health, right? And within about 2 months into the program, what the call was for people wanting just to come together and do art. And what we learned was that, okay, so everybody in this cohort really just wanted to meet other people. Well, they have their interests too, but they just wanted to meet other people that were like-minded. And what they wanted to do was create art and collaborate, and be intimate with each other, right? And so, we had to figure out, change our curriculum a little bit, to figure that one out in order to be responsive to our needs. So I feel like art is a way that I think gives us freedom, right, to explore intimacy without fear.
I agree. Can I add to that? I just really feel, no, I just wanted to say also, I hear us often say art saves lives, and people don't express how that is. I am a poet, and I have been writing poetry since I was 9 years old. And art was something that I could weaponize. I could use my words to fight when my hands didn't work. What I figured out was how to move systems and people with a gift. And I think art does the same thing. It is a vehicle for moving people and things with a gift.
I'll add to it too. I think that a lot of times people downplay and say, oh, I'm not an artist. Oh, I'm not creative, right? And then when you engage them in the act of art, they find this spark and this beauty in themselves. And especially during these times where, as you were saying, like it is a way to create that sense of intimacy. There is such a deep, deep level of isolation that has existed before COVID, but has been exacerbated and finally got a spotlight, which has dimmed, unfortunately. But over the last couple of years, it's there. And art really provides that doorway, as you were saying, for folks to be able to just release and tap into this inner peace and this spark that we have and create something. It's an amazing, amazing vehicle. And I think sometimes it takes nothing but a piece of construction paper and a crayon, all the way up to, much more, different types of tools and all of that, but it's fully accessible. And it's really beautiful what happens when you bring together the generations around it.
Yes, I'd love to now circle to that. So through storytelling and art and the intergenerational connection, that is like all of the magic of, or not just, as we've already covered, it's like three really important and significant pieces of CHTA. So how does intergenerational connection, what is the magic there that helps young people and older adults alike? Like, what is it about getting those two generations or two separate generations together in a space like that? How does that help?
I think sometimes it can be as simple as recognizing something else in the other person that is familiar to you. With intergenerational connections, we often have this belief that, oh, I can't talk to an older person, or, oh, I have nothing in common with a younger person. And so being in that non-judgmental creative space, they can recognize the spark in each other and then start to explore that.
Have you seen like any stories you want to share? We do have to wrap up here, I'm pretty sure.
There's so many. I will share one. Particularly, we were doing Adorned in Affirmation was a workshop that so I created a list of things I wanted to see happen, and then I went and picked friends who could do that to facilitate it. And Adorned in Affirmations was simply creating jewelry and art that we could wear that gave us strength. My friends make most of my jewelry, almost all of it. And so I had Jennifer Rook come in and teach everyone how to make earrings or keychains or whatever they wanted. And we had over 35 people show up for the very first session. And they came in, and we had people that were 6 years old, 94. And what you would see is one of our older adults would make something absolutely amazing, and the artist in the youth has forgotten about the fact that we don't have anything in common and flocked to their art. And now they're talking because, oh my God, it's so beautiful. And how did you do that? And then they're like, I can show you how I did it. And then next thing you know, the two of them are now best friends, and they're paired off creating together repeatedly at every event. And I watched it over and over and over again. The seeing each other's art eliminated all the other barriers because the artist in one would respond to the artist in the other. More than anything, I am just very grateful to be in community with people who believe in the work that we do and the vision, and that give me hope that we can continue to do this, and we can build capacity, and we can make a stronger community. Ultimately, I just want to build a stronger community. I see my friends falling and burn out, and they're running nonprofits, and they're running micro businesses. And I believe that for us, it was the answer. If I can give them strength and resources, and while we're giving them strength and resources, it's giving our participants connection and family and community. then I know that we'll all be okay in the end.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you for this amazing conversation. I wish we had 3 hours.